President Cyril Ramaphosa has admitted that the country needs to add more capacity to the electricity grid. He says that land will be made available next to existing power stations for renewable energy projects. Now, in his weekly newsletter out today, the President says there's no reason why a country such as ours, with the skills, capabilities and resources, should have to endure a shortage of electricity. He says that in the coming days, he'll announce a comprehensive set of actions to achieve quicker progress in tackling load shedding. Let's speak about this with the UDM's Deputy President, Nqabayomzi Kwankwa. Mr. Kwankwa, very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program. So the President says that while load shedding appears to be worsening, the reality is that several actions have been taken to address the shortfall of electricity in the country. Do you find that reassuring?
No, it's not reassuring. I mean, if you remember correctly, the President made a similar speech in Parliament in 2015, where he even said, publicly declared that load shedding was going to be a thing of the past. 7 years later, the problem has actually taken a turn for the worse. We have reached a crisis point. And every time we reach a crisis point, more promises are made instead of them making hard proposals or commitment about the way forward. When I read the open letter, I did not see anything new. I didn't see anything that the African National Congress has not said in the past. And so I'm left with one feeling that everything that the President has said, you will have to forgive us. It rings very hollow. We take it with a pinch of salt. Until our view has always been, Tembegi, that we said we can't get other people who give us secondary information about what's happening at Eskom accounting on behalf of Eskom. We have made it clear that we want Eskom to come and appear before portfolio committees in Parliament. We've requested for a parliamentary debate. We want to be able to make our own informed view about what the challenges at Eskom are at this point in time. We also want to be able to see and detect whether during this time when there was industrial action and so on, whether there was a leadership problem. If there was a leadership problem or failure, then people must be held to account. The President, yes, is expected to comment on this issue, but they must not speak on behalf of the entity. The entity must come to us.
Well, the entity has been giving these weekly, well, daily, in fact, at some point, the briefings about where we are with the grid. 10 a.m. is the usual time. I think Andre Director spoke today as well. How helpful have those been in explaining where the country is with the electricity crisis?
They just give us the same excuses we've had a million times. I mean, when they appear before the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprise and Energy, we are going to interrogate their plans. We are going to punch holes into some of the operational plans they've put in place. The reason why they are running away from us is because it's easy to have a one-way communication in the media where no one is asking you questions, you're not accounting to anyone, you're able to sift information and only portray or show or share the only information that you think is relevant for the public. But what we want is a situation where we can discuss all issues, where their failures are. I mean, I even cited this in the past, that we used to, they would share information about us, their maintenance plan, proactive maintenance of existing infrastructure. They'd also be able to tell us as to what challenges would be and what interventions they were putting in place and whether they required additional funding to sort out those issues. That does not happen now. Eskom seems to be talking. Yes, sorry.
Where do you stand, Mr. Kwankwa, on the argument, and this was made by Busi Mavuso, the board member, remember that meeting where the Scopa chair, when she and the Scopa chair, Nkululeko Hlengwa, had that exchange, where she was basically saying that this is a board of management that found an existing crisis, which is true, but at what point do we stop saying that the crisis was not of their making and therefore excusing perhaps the lack or delay in progress just because they weren't the people responsible for the initial decisions that landed us here?
No, that's true. It's true that they are not responsible for the mess, but they are responsible for resolving the mess. That's why the taxpayer is paying. So while it's easy to say the ANC created the mess, we accept that and we know that for a fact, but we've employed them to resolve the current problem. If they can't resolve it, then they must walk. We need to find people who can. That's why you employ people. You don't employ them to make excuses and shift blame, which is what has been happening over the past couple of weeks. We don't want the blame shifting that has been taking place. We want people to take accountability. We want people to account for their failures and mistakes. And if we find that the Minister of Public Enterprises, for example, has failed, we'll call on the President to remove it. If it's Director and his executive management, we'll make sure that they are removed. It seems like they are trying to avoid us or prevent us from having that conversation. All that we need to rely on is this useless briefing, because they never change load shedding. The program still continues. We are told that we're doing this, that, and the other, but there will still be load shedding. What we want is a discussion that is going to map a clear way forward to say, in order for us to ensure that we don't experience load shedding, these are the mitigating steps that we need to take, or these are the interventions we need to make. That's what the kind of discussion we have currently.
So the President says in this newsletter today that there's no reason why a country, South Africa's resources and skill set, should be dealing with an energy or electricity crisis. How do you explain that if, according to the President, we've got the skills, the resources, the know-how to address this, but since 2008, the load shedding reality for people at least appears to be getting worse? I mean, we all complained with stage 2. Now, in the last 3 weeks or so, stage 4 and 6 have become the norm.
No, it's because they've deliberately collapsed Eskom for their own reasons. Obviously, because I'm sure some of them, they have shares or they get kickbacks from the independent power producers. So it's important to collapse Eskom so that you can privatize it the same way that it was done at SAE. But at the same time, you'll recall that the ANC is responsible for this mess in the sense that when South Africans wanted to roll up their sleeves and get involved, they preferred to deploy cadres. They preferred to remove all the skills that he is now talking about that were at Eskom that would have been enabled us to make sure that we don't experience load shedding. Now that there's been a skills drain at Eskom, they are making it the problem of South Africa. How?
And in terms of accountability, when Eskom management does come before Parliament or the Minister of Public Enterprises, even the Energy Minister, say, Mineral Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe, some say, has a case to answer as far as the energy crisis. Do you expect that the ANC MPs will move in one accord with the opposition parties in demanding answers and accountability?
Firstly, when they come to account to Parliament, we don't want this useless and stupid virtual meeting. They don't work. Because usually when you ask difficult questions, all of a sudden then people start to have connectivity problems. And they always claim that they are going to respond to in writing and never do. I mean, I've had many of those instances ever since Parliament decided to adopt the virtual or hybrid mode or the virtual portfolio committee meetings. They need to appear before Parliament. We have a physical meeting and we discuss the issues in detail so that we can interrogate issues. Because the challenge with virtual platforms is that there's no interrogation of issues. What happens is that each MP chips in, you make your input, and then after that they drift away and continue their lives. So there is no coherence in what we do. So there needs to be proper planning. The second issue is, it doesn't matter what the ANC MPs decide to do, but what we are going to do, because you must remember that oversight, in the true sense of the word, is the purview of the opposition. We are going to ask the difficult questions. We are going to ask them the uncomfortable questions. We'll make sure that we prepare ourselves properly so that the South African public can be able to make up their minds about what is happening at their Eskom and what needs to be done. Whether they vote in favor of whether they vote in favor of the right action or they decide to defend their party position. But South Africans will, at that time, shall be aware of what's happening at their own entity. Currently, all we are being told, this is what's happening, load shedding, you must, there's too much load on the grid, this is what you must do. There's no substantive discussion about the challenges facing Eskom, and that's what we want.
Nqabayomzi Kwankwa, UDM Deputy President, good to speak to you, sir. Thank you.